Hi, everybody. It's Karen Green here from Melbourne, Australia. I am a personal trainer and online health coach. I have been training and coaching people for 24 years now. And something that I want to talk to you about today is emotional eating because this is something that comes up very, very often with my clients and especially my online clients who I mentor for better healthy habits and healthy lifestyle habits. Something that is very common. In the Western world today, because of the abundance of food that we have, and also the busy lives that we have and the stress that's associated with that, a lot of people turn to emotional eating. So, emotional eating is when there is an uncontrollable desire to eat delicious foods and an abundance of them, often eating to capacity. It's not just satisfying a physical hunger; it's trying to satisfy and suppress, oftentimes, the emotions, and that's why obviously it's called emotional eating. So it's when we tend to reach for junk foods, sweets, other comforting foods, and it can often be even at a time of reward. So if something amazing has happened, or perhaps there's been an achievement, and you want to reward yourself perhaps with ice cream, sweets, treats, or a beautiful night out where you're really indulging in foods that you wouldn't ordinarily indulge in, but then going overboard. So there's one thing about having a beautiful, delicious meal, but then the other issue is going overboard and being out of control. The emotional eating is caused oftentimes to make people feel better. And it's better in the moment because then this cycle of feeling guilty about overeating and emotional eating can take over. It doesn't fix the problem, it can make it worse because the original issue actually remains. And then you have this cycle of feeling guilty for overeating. So, a lot of my clients, unfortunately, do struggle with emotional eating, and something that I try to work with them on is tools to help them recognize why. Because when they recognize why, there's often a pattern, and then they can actually face those reasons and potentially put some tools in place to have it happen less and less, and have some tactics and ways of assisting them to deal with it. Now, I'm not a psychologist by any means, but obviously being in the industry for 24 years and having a lot of experience with people and their habits, it's I guess some methods that I've developed, and they are quite well-known methods as well that you can use to try and deal with your emotional eating. However, if there are some serious and deeper issues, then you would want to obviously go to a professional to help you with that. It might be a psychologist, it might be a nutritionist or dietitian, to help you with really resolving some deeper issues there. But if you think that you're an emotional eater and you can potentially do it on your own, then some of these tactics might be really, really helpful. And I would invite you to try them and see if they work. And if not, then probably you need to seek further assistance. So, again, this is just some ideas. And even just the talk that I want to do right now is just to raise awareness, because you might not even realize that you're emotionally eating, and that could be stopping you from reaching your goals. So, specifically, if you have fat loss goals, which comes down to calorie consumption, if you're overeating your calories, you're not going to be able to lose weight. So, getting that under control is key. And the other issue is that if you are emotionally eating and not dealing with issues at hand, then you probably want to really try and get on top of that. So, are you an emotional eater? Basically, comes down to the fact that do you eat when you shouldn't necessarily be eating? If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling upset, you're bored, you're anxious, there could be lots of reasons that you turn to food when you don't necessarily need to be eating. So, are you eating more than you need to be eating because of those emotions? Are you eating when you're not hungry? Are you eating to make yourself feel better? Are you eating to reward yourself with food? And again, are you eating to your maximum capacity? So you might be eating your meal, but then going back for seconds and really eating until you've stuffed yourself. Some people will eat also because it actually makes them feel safe. So they turn to food almost as though it's a friend, it's a comfort, it's something that doesn't judge them. And so food becomes that comfort for them. And once again, that's where they're suppressing other emotions and turning to food for that comfort. And the last one in my points is that if you're feeling powerless, if you're feeling like things are a bit out of control, then sometimes you will turn to food to help you regain that control. But again, it's temporary because you're not actually addressing the issues at hand. You're just using food to band aid what is actually going on. So, those are the main, I guess, ways to recognize if you are an emotional eater, if you don't realize already. And a lot of my clients, as I said, they do recognize it. And so, they're trying to deal with this cycle of emotional eating and trying to break that cycle. Um, the issue is that when you eat emotionally, it doesn't satisfy the reason that you're eating. So there's this constant cycle that happens. You feel really good in the moment, but then you feel really bad and feel really guilty. So, then you start eating all over again. And, that could be a period of hours or days. You feel worse than you did because you just can't break out of that cycle. And then you're beating yourself up for, not having willpower and self control, which really, you're not addressing the issue. So how can you expect things to change? So learning to have healthier ways to deal with your emotions is important. So that's where counseling can um, come into things, to actually face the issues at hand, and learning ways to cope with those specific issues will then move you away from food, hopefully. So it doesn't matter how far into it you are, there is always hope. No matter where you are, I say that with fitness as well, with strength, anything in life, there's always hope if you want to make a change. But it does come down to you. So it comes down to you recognizing what's going on, and then addressing it as best as you can and making those gradual changes. It's never going to be an overnight flick of a switch, and you're going to be able to make those changes. So recognizing it, first of all, I've mentioned all those reasons that could uh, bring you to the attention that you're an emotional eater. The other things that I want to mention are actually the comparison between emotional eating versus actually eating because of hunger. So physical hunger, which is something that comes on slowly. Uh, Lunch is approaching or dinner is approaching, and you know that you're getting more hungry for that meal. But when it's an emotional hunger, you are wanting it in the moment. It comes on suddenly. Something's happened, something's triggered you, and you want to go to the pantry and you want to get some food. So there is a distinct difference between emotional hunger and the physical hunger. The other part of it is that emotional hunger feels like it needs to be. You need to fulfill it instantaneously. Like you are going to be crazy if you don't fill it with food immediately, right? And if you are physically hungry, you can kind of wait it out a little bit. Like you don't have to eat right away. Sure, you're feeling hungry, but you can wait until the food comes. And when the food does come, you can generally make a really good choice of what you're going to eat. You have a little bit more control with physical hunger. But with emotional hunger, you want it now. There's something specific that you want. You might be craving chocolate, you might be craving a burger, whatever it is, a pizza. There's the emotional hunger that is taking over, and you're wanting to suppress those emotions with something in particular that you know is going to do the job. Um, Oftentimes, you're not satisfied, and so you'll keep eating. But with physical hunger, you'll get to the point where you're full and you'll stop eating. So that's a distinct difference as well. And the emotional eating will trigger those feelings of being powerless or feeling guilty or shame. Whereas when you're eating for physical hunger, there are no emotions. You've eaten, you finish your meal, and you get on with life. There's no emotion involved with physical hunger. You satisfy that physical hunger and then you move on with things. So hopefully that also gives you a different perspective on how to look at emotional eating. And then addressing sort of the triggers is key to that. So the next step would be actually figuring out what is it that's causing the emotional eating. And there could be lots of different reasons. It could be stress, it could be, as again, as I said, a reward for something, it could be anxiety, it could be loneliness, it could be boredom. There's going to be lots of different reasons why you're feeling the need for the emotional eating. Another one that does come up with clients is that there's a social pressure. So you might be in a social environment where people are putting out lots of food and they're expecting you to eat. There might be alcohol involved, which then, puts your guards down and you don't have that sort of self control, and then you overeat, or the pressure that they want you to eat. And it's very hard to say no. I have a lot of clients that will tell me there are festivals or events where they have to go and they need to eat. So this can definitely lead to emotional eating, feeling pressure, feeling a little bit out of control because you're being sort of pushed in the direction of eating. And this is also something that can stem from childhood if you do have regular, if you're a big family and you have regular family events. Perhaps, there's this reminiscent reminder of the barbecue, your father grilling the burgers on the barbecue, and everybody sits around and eats these burgers. And perhaps as an adult you don't necessarily want to feel that, but when you smell the smell of a barbecue, it makes you, want to eat things that you don't necessarily are not part of your plan, perhaps. So, backtracking to your childhood memories, parents may have rewarded you as well with ice cream or lollies for being good or getting a good report card. Um, Perhaps feeding you lollies when you were sad. So those sort of habits as an adult could be driven by what you went through as a child. And so addressing that can really help to try and break that cycle. So that's one that does come up quite a bit, is that the adults I work with are really set with these habits from childhood, as well as the social influences that I mentioned. So what I often will suggest to my clients is that they keep a diary for a number of weeks, perhaps set, for the month. And I get them to write down as much as they can, as much detail as possible. When they can recognize what has triggered the emotional eating, there is a better chance of them succeeding with minimizing it happening again, and also having tools in place to face what is going to happen if they know that that's going to impact them in some way. So every time they overeat, or every time they feel compelled to go to the pantry and eat foods that they shouldn't necessarily be eating at that particular point in time, I get them to make a note of that. So writing as much down as they can, what they ate, how they felt before they ate the food, how they felt while they were eating the food, how they felt after they ate the food. And of course, what was it that actually got you to that point? What was it that triggered you? And over time, they see a pattern emerging, and then that sort of helps them to break it down and to pinpoint knowing when that might happen again. So once they identify those triggers, they can find healthier ways to to feed those feelings. Pardon the pun there. Some of the alternatives that I would suggest to my clients, for example, my clients who are anxious. Perhaps there's a lot going on in their lives. Perhaps there's a bit of stress there and they're anxious. They've got this built up energy. I always suggest, if they see that there's that pattern, to find ways to relieve that energy, be it going for a walk, going for a run. Perhaps it's putting on some music and dancing. Perhaps it's squeezing a stress ball. But you need to find a different way to use up anxious energy, obviously, rather than turning to food. The other one is, a lot of the parents I work with are really tired. They get to the end of the day and they're exhausted. So my suggestion to them is that they make sure that instead of turning to food for comfort, that they actually do things to allow some TLC. Perhaps it's lighting a candle, perhaps it's having a cup of tea, taking a bath even, and just giving themselves that extra love and quietness and calmness than turning to food to perhaps try and give them some energy. They need to rest, they need to take it easy. And so, having those tools in place can really help. The other one is boredom, that comes up quite a bit. And same thing with that, tools that are going to be giving them something to do. So learning a new language, perhaps learning an instrument, perhaps taking on a new hobby or skill or craft or something like that. So they've got an alternate option of how they can channel that energy into not being bored and not using food as a way to fill their time or to feel that comfort of being bored or lonely. So oftentimes boredom and loneliness can go together. So again, joining a group to find an activity that you can do, or perhaps even it's just a matter of calling a friend, watching a movie and keeping yourself engaged in other ways. Um, but education is always a great one. Learn something new, learn a new language, perhaps even do a course of some sort. So there are lots of different ways that you can deal with distracting yourself from the food and also nourishing those needs. And these are very simple and I don't want to say superficial, but these are simple ways to deal with them. If there are much deeper things going on, then that really does need to be addressed with a professional. um, the last tip, I guess, that I would give my clients, so the first one is sort of the diary and logging things, finding that pattern, then finding a solution of an alternate way to channel whatever it is, the emotions that triggered them. And then the third thing that I like to suggest is actually having a circuit breaker. So I usually suggest 5 minutes is ideal because 5 minutes is enough time for you to actually set a timer and walk away and go and do something else. You can do lots of things in 5 minutes. Run the bath, get a book, find a movie to watch. Set that timer that you cannot go to the food. Now, if 5 minutes is too long, which a lot of people in the beginning will say, whoa, the time goes so slowly. Set yourself 1 minute. So for the first month, every time you are triggered, set a 1 minute timer, walk away. If after that 1 minute, which gives you time to just circuit break, go away and think about what you were about to do, you might actually talk yourself out of it, or you may not, but you'll come back and you would have had time to think about it and you may not eat what you were going to eat, or you may not eat as much of what you were going to eat. So starting with 1 minute, hopefully then you can build to 2 minutes in the second month, 3 minutes in the third month, and keep working on that. And then hopefully it will actually happen less and less and less. You will actually find that you can manage, walking away, and 10 minutes goes by, and then you've completely, missed that window of resorting to emotional eating, and you're distracted, and before you know it, it's mealtime. So circuit breaking with a stop, with a buzzer and the alarm clock. Take 5, have a break, walk away, and that can really help you with your mindset as well. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I hope that this has just raised a little bit of awareness and some ideas and some tips that might work for you. As I said, you may need to seek professional advice, but if you think that some of these tools and these tricks might help, then give them a shot. I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to hear how you deal with emotional eating and how perhaps you've overcome it, or perhaps someone is dealing with it, and you've got some ideas here, hopefully that can help if they're not willing to seek professional help. But if you would like some support, I would love to help guide you potentially if you are a good fit for my online coaching program. So please reach out. Don't be shy. It just takes, a minute to send a message, and I'll be more than happy to have a chat and see if I can help guide you and support you to your journey, on your journey for better health and fitness. And yeah, love to hear from you all. So thank you so much for watching today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.